Are you seriously fired up about growing as a leader in business or church-based ministry? Are you feeling somewhat frustrated about not having realized your full potential in what you've been called to do? Could you do with someone to help you get some extra clarity or to be a sounding board for your plans and ideas? Great athletes have coaches, so do great leaders. The right leadership coach for you will result in an increased sense of clarity, direction, and purpose, dramatically increasing the results you achieve. If you're ready to step up, contact Errol to book a free, no-obligation introductory coaching session and see whether Errol is the right coach for you. Errol takes the lessons learned from his own leadership journey and from his extensive research to help leaders and entrepreneurs to step into their biggest challenges and rise to their next level. Email admin@errollawson.com right now to schedule your call.
Hello and welcome again to the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast with me, Errol Lawson, and my very special guest today is Kim Avery. Kim's mission is to change the world through coaching, one successful coach at a time. As a professional certified coach, certified business coach, and vice president of marketing at the Professional Christian Coaching Institute, Kim simplifies business building for Christian coaches so they can do what they were created to do. Coach. Spending the first 20 years of her professional life as a counselor, Kim had no idea how critical marketing was to having a full and thriving coaching practice. So, after going into business for herself and spending months struggling to find clients, Kim decided to lay everything else aside and dedicate herself to learning and implementing all of the best offline and online marketing tactics. Surprisingly, she fell in love with marketing and not only filled her practice with ideal clients, but now through coaching, teaching, writing, and creating products, she helps other coaches do the same. She has been described by her clients as inspiring, supportive, innovative, strategic, caring, and possessing a wealth of knowledge. And it is her joy to help Christian coaches succeed as they partner with God to change the world. Kim, wow, it's so amazing to have you today. Good afternoon, good evening. What time is it where you are?
It is so good to be here today, Errol, and so exciting to be a part of this podcast and this movement of rising leaders, especially Christian leaders, that's taking place all over the globe.
Come on. First of all, fill in any gaps in your bio for us, please, Kim, and then give us a glimpse of what you're up to in the world right now.
Yeah, so it was interesting to listen to somebody read my bio because I think, wow, at any point in my early life, if you'd read that bio and said, that's your bio, Kim, I would have said, no, I think you pulled the wrong index card, my friend. That's not exactly the way I scripted my life to be. I am definitely an accidental coach, a reluctant entrepreneur. I had no idea I was getting into entrepreneurship when I became a coach.
Wow.
And so it's fun to see God take various threads of our lives and weave them together for our good and His glory. So I may be a little bit older than your average listener. And so looking back in retrospect, it's always a joy to see how what seems like detours in our lives are actually part of God's very intentional strategic plan. So it's kind of fun to be sitting on this side of the podcast chair and listening to my bio. So thanks for reading that.
Well, I know you're doing some really interesting and much needed work in the world of coaching and Christian coaching in particular. But where did it all begin for you? How did you get into this type and line of work or ministry, you might call it? What were you doing beforehand? And how do you transition into this?
Yeah, so I think I was probably born in church. I'm a church girl, Errol. My earliest memories are of sitting in folding metal chairs, singing Jesus Loves Me, and looking at Robert Hooke's portrait of Jesus and those deep brown eyes that Jesus had. And I fell in love with Jesus. Wow. And so I got a little bit older and the setting changed. We moved to campfires and we started singing Pass It On. I don't know if you've ever heard that song.
I don't recognize that one, but...
And then I finally graduated to the cushioned pew of the adult world and saying, it is well with my soul.
Amen.
But you know what was funny as an adult? I realized it was not well beneath that shiny veneer of the church I was attending, or the church after that, or the church after that.
Wow.
And so there were some really deep gaps between what people were saying and singing on Sunday morning and the way we were all, including myself, living on Monday morning. And as I look back, I think my whole life, has been a drive to try to bridge that gap for myself and for other people.
Wow.
In ministry, it was through discipleship, teaching Sunday school class, teaching Bible studies, being involved in ministry, finally even becoming a professional counselor to speak into some of the deep woundedness and brokenness that even Christians feel. But in all honesty, none of them were moving the needle nearly as much as I wanted them to. And then one day, the skies opened and the angels came out and sang the Hallelujah chorus, and I discovered coaching. And it really has made a difference in my life, in the lives of people I work with, in churches. And so I really am kind of dedicating my life to the cause of helping Christian coaches succeed in this world.
Awesome. You described a gap. Tell us about the gap that you saw. Is that gap still there today?
Oh, of course. The gap is there for so many people. And it was so interesting for me, like take my Bible study teaching capacity to sit at the front of the room and disseminate God's truths, which are powerful. And watch them land and sink in and take root and have 10, 20% of the people in the room grow and thrive and change and be transformed. And then there's that other large majority that would nod their heads in agreement and smile. But if I ran into them on a weekday, their circumstances were driving their mood instead of joy being the permeating foundation of everything.
Wow.
Their lives really weren't Christ-saturated. So this remained between what we say we believe and what we really live out, which I believe is what we truly believe. And so we're all bridging the gap until we get to heaven.
Sure.
But I think coaching comes alongside and partners with people in a very individual, customized, nurturing, community-oriented way that we were made to change within that really helps some of those people move forward who were not able to move forward in terms of just receiving teaching.
I'm going to go a little bit off track, off the beaten track here in one sense. When I ask, like when you analyze that gap that you described, and I think we can all listen and can relate to the gap. Can you give us an example of something you found in the gap and maybe a technique or a tool that you use to help people navigate through that?
Yeah, I found that I think I have an underlying assumption, and maybe we all do, that other people are just like me. That they think like I do, they learn like I do, maybe their background is similar to mine, and it's unconscious. Obviously, it's not intellectually sound, but nonetheless, when I teach, when preachers preach, when we write books, when we try to reach out in a mass-oriented way, we are coming at it from our worldview and what worked for us.
Right.
And of course, we're very excited to pass on what worked for us.
Of course.
And that may work for a large amount of people. But it's fascinating to me when I get in one-on-one coaching or coaching groups, and God's principles never change. So we're discussing a point of God's truth. For example, living joy-filled lives, even in difficult circumstances, and then saying to Nancy or Tiffany versus myself, and what helps you hang on to this truth? And if there's 8 people in that room, there will be 8 different answers. And coaching allows that to come up and rise out of people, so they can claim that truth and utilize it as their own in their life with their personality.
Right. So I get that. So 2 questions come to mind then. Is coaching something that should be intentionally built into the system or into our church leadership paradigm, if you like? Or is it that how does a leader or a coach or a minister or a pastor get that same response or same result on a larger scale? Is it possible to do that?
I think the answer, thankfully, is kind of a coaching answer. It's not either or, it's both and. Yes. having intentional coaching in the church would be such a blessing. Some of the deepest wounds I found in the church were caused by other people in the church.
Yeah.
Sometimes even the church leadership. And I knew, of course, firsthand, so many of these church leaders, it was unintentional. It was not malicious. It was not studied. It was an example of them coming from their paradigm and saying, no, you, round peg, need to fit in my square hole, or vice versa, because they didn't have the techniques, the ability, the skills, the awareness that coaches have on how everyone is different, and that doesn't violate the true principle that runs through everything. So whether it's formal or informal, I think coaching brings something to the table that so many of these other one-size-fits-all solutions don't. So just one other quick example. Think about Jesus. If you said to Jesus as he was walking through the Gospels, okay, what's the gospel? How is it a man can be saved? Well, for some people, it's pick up your mat and walk. For other people, it's forgive and go and sin no more. For someone else, it was sell everything you have and then come and follow me. Of course, his answer's the same, but each individual that he met, he applied it to their heart and their situation. And coaching taught me how to do that as a counselor when I did not know how.
Right. So maybe there's a church leader here listening, or an emerging leader listening, and they're taking on board what you're saying, and they want to be able to use the tool of coaching more effectively. What advice would you give to them?
Well, one of the things I get to do in my current life, which is so fun, is to train other coaches. And I do that at the Professional Christian Coaching Institute in conjunction with Chris McCluskey. And I have learned that I would never want to hire a doctor who got his degree. I just wouldn't. I would want him to have looked at real patients and gotten feedback and worked in a lab type setting, right? I wouldn't want to hire a counselor who had gotten their counseling degree without direct interaction and supervision from a live human being that said, which is exactly what I had to do, yeah, Kim, that went well, but you could have, or here's an opportunity to get better. So I am personally an advocate of live, whether it's over the phone or in person, coach training, because we learn better when we do get feedback, adjust, and do again. And so I love the idea of getting trained and working with a coach. Whether you need certification or not is totally up to you. You may just want to take a class or two, but I do think it's very beneficial.
Excellent. And transitioning back into our scheduled questions. Was there like a significant epiphany for you? Was there a point on your journey, on your leadership journey, where maybe you were heading in one direction and an event happened or something happened that caused you to go in a completely different direction? Can you tell us that story?
Of course, I don't know of anybody in the world who probably couldn't say yes to that question. God loves to take hard right turns without putting on a blinker. So for me, my heart, you can tell my passion is for the church. I've always been this church girl, but because of some leadership issues and some different things about 15 years ago, about the same time I was training to become a coach and starting my business, for reasons which don't need to be gone into, I could no longer stay at my church and support what they were doing and what was going on. And so to make the least amount of ripples as possible, kind of tried to quietly slip out the back door, and even went to church in another town so that I wouldn't accidentally foment people to follow me or anything. But all of a sudden, here was this church girl in a new place in a different city on Sundays who couldn't serve. I was without a church functionally. Wow. And it was so hard. And I asked God for 4 or 5 years, I'm not a pew sitter, but here I am in this situation. And for various reasons, it can't change. What are you doing? Plus, I want to build a coaching business with people who know, like, and trust me. And nobody around me knows me, likes me, trusts me, because I'm in a different place.
Wow.
And so God, almost as it were, forced my hand to learn to work virtually and to work online.
Wow.
And so it was so unexpected, and I went kicking and screaming, but it really informed the rest of my career to this point as a coach.
And what was there's so much in that story. Has that been your biggest challenge in your journey so far?
I think it probably has for me, because I'm a people person. And if I want to do something, I want to do it in company. And if I want to learn something, I want to share it with other people. And so that huge sense of isolation. I mean, of course, I've had huge challenges in life. I've lost my voice for long periods of time, which if you can't talk, you can't coach. I've been in bed for years with chronic illness. So there's always suffering and pain in life, the school of pain. But I think that isolation and that sense of, I found my calling, and it's coaching, and then God moving me out, as it were, into the desert where there weren't any people, so that I, kind of an introvert, had to learn how to market online. That was a big, hard right turn for me. Yeah.
And what was the lesson that you learned in that journey, in that process?
One of many lessons is that God is smart. He's really, really smart. And he has a reason for everything. I'm very risk averse. I don't like to rise to the front. I like to hide in the back. And my favorite zip code is the one of my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I try never to leave it. So God has to, as he did the early disciples with the move of persecution, no, you will leave Jerusalem, and you will go to Samaria, and you will go to Rome, and you will go to the uttermost parts of the earth. God is smart. And he said, I've got to turn up the heat, Kim, in your comfort zone, so that you will leave and do what I'm calling you to do. And so I think it's really built my faith in the seemingly unexpected sufferings and obstacles in my life, that there's a reason for this. There's always a reason for this. And God will use it. And it gives me that longer term perspective, which helps us during difficult times.
Awesome. There is a reason. There is a reason for this, guys. A reason for any challenge that you're facing or you're seeing yourself in right now. There is a reason. Kim, the interviews began with a desire really to get some information and insight about leadership, and we ended up writing a book called The 5 Core Abilities of Highly Effective Leaders, based on these interviews that we've had over the last kind of year and a half or so. And there are 5 things that we recognize, internationally recognized leaders like yourself do really well. So I'd like to just ask you a question about the 5 core abilities and see where you stand with these. So the first core ability we recognize that leaders have is the ability to create and communicate a compelling vision. How have you gone about creating and communicating your vision for your business or ministry? What's your process?
Yeah, thank you for that. So when I began my coach training, they forced us to, as it were, do that, the mission, vision, purpose statements, those kinds of things. And I asked the Lord to help me put words to that. And I'm very, very clear on that. And I was thankful for it. And I really do want God's people to be Christ-saturated, joy-filled, and purpose-driven. I didn't know what I was going to do with that, but that was important. That's what I wanted for the church. And so when I asked the Lord, who am I in that process? He really communicated that to me. Kim, you're a catalyst, someone whose talk, energy, or enthusiasm precipitates an event or change.
Wow.
And so basically, I just am called to live my life out loud. I do that through blogging, through a podcast, Professional Christian Coaching Today, through social media, through Facebook, through classes I teach, and in all sorts of unintended ways. And can I share a fun story about that?
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not managing our time really well. Okay. So this summer, I live in Central Florida here in the United States. And this past summer, we got hit with Hurricane Irma. I don't know if that sounds familiar to anybody. And so as the forecasters were forecasting the path of the storm, and the cone of possibility kind of narrowed to a cone of pretty certainty right over Kim Avery's house here in Central Florida. And so I went outside with my little insurance adjuster, what it looks like when it all blows away in the storm. And I've been, like everybody here in Florida, watching the news nonstop and talking to my neighbors and trying to buy all the bottled water in the grocery store. And it was so despairing and so discouraging, and people were so full of anxiety. So I just turned my little iPhone around and made a little home movie and said, my friends, if it's all here tomorrow, if it's all gone tomorrow, God loves you. He has you. He's holding you. It's okay. I went we had to clean out my master bedroom closet, totally stripped it bare so that my granddaughters and I and my husband and the dog and my daughter-in-law, we could all have a safe room when the hurricane came, because hurricanes are noisy and loud and they blow rooms and houses away. So I took pictures. I put in this DVD player for the girls and these beanbag chairs and all these fun toys. I'm like, this is what God's like in the middle of a storm.
Amen.
He's saying, enjoy me, enjoy our companionship. Put your feet up. I've got this. So anyway, I was sharing my little videos during Hurricane Irma, and I've probably gotten more views on those videos than any of my official marketing videos I've ever put out anywhere, because God's saying, just whatever we do as believers, as leaders, our vision, just live your life out loud with it. Just share it, and people will catch it.
Amen. Amen. Awesome. And the second core ability is about finance, money. It's about our ability to create and manage wealth. How did you make your first dollar in your business?
Probably twisted a friend's arm and said, please let me coach you and pay me some money so I can get coaching hours. But thankfully, I've gotten a little more sophisticated since that time. I love that parable, and I know you've talked about it before in your podcast in Luke 19, where the master goes off on a journey and he says to his 3 servants, engage in business until I return.
Wow.
And I hear that echoing in my ear a lot. Jesus is saying, Kim, engage in business, which means steward things well, make a profit so that you can pay for your needs, your family's needs, enjoy what you have, and invest in other people who do things you're really bad at, Kim. So I don't like to cook. I don't like to change the oil in my car. I don't like to do graphic design. This virtuous cycle of business is important to the Lord. This is how the world goes around. I use my gifts. I make enough money so I can pay you so you can use your gifts, and around it goes. And so the Lord has, as it were, kind of sold me on this idea of making money, not to be greedy, but to meet my needs, to make a profit, and to allow other people to thrive and shine at what they do. And so I do that through offering marketing programs, obviously individual coaching, teaching, the things that I love to do that I feel like the Lord's gifted me to do.
Awesome. And is it only Christians that you work with, Kim?
Well, interestingly enough, how niching can be. I communicate that I'm working with Christians who are building businesses for Christians or for non-Christians, but I do frequently get people who say, I'm not necessarily of the Christian faith, but I like the integrity, the ethics, the generous spirit that you bring to the marketing journey. And I'm like, come along for the ride. Yeah.
Awesome. And when it comes to the next abilities around productivity, and it's about being able to focus on the key things and then eliminate or delegate the rest. Do you have an activity or a process or an app even that you use has helped you to increase your productivity?
Yeah. I'm a productivity geek. I love to be productive. So that's a hard question because a number of things come to mind, but I'm going to go really old school with this one. I think my best productive habit is what I call my morning meeting with God. So in Psalm 5:3, it says, in the morning, O Lord, you will hear my voice. In the morning, I will order my prayer to you and eagerly watch. And so I thought, here I am partnering with the God of the universe who knows everything, knows everyone, holds all resources. Maybe, just maybe, if I checked with him about my business and my calendar every morning and said, here's our morning business meeting, CEO of my business, God, what do you want for me today? My day might go better. And it really does. So that's actually my favorite productivity app, as it were.
Brilliant. And then the next one is about team. And it's about getting the best out of the people you lead, whether they like you or not even. when it comes to building a team for you in your business or a new project, what process works best for you? And have you tried something in the past that didn't work so well?
But yes to both answers. I have a team at the Professional Christian Coaching Institute that works with me in the marketing department, and we work together really well. And I do like it when they like me, to be honest with you. But I have found that trying to hire someone that I like and then train them to do something is much, much harder than finding someone who already is doing what I need done, and as it were, recruiting them to be a part of our team.
Interesting.
That's the way I try to go about it now.
Babe, I'm recording. That's really interesting. How did you come to that understanding?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I was thinking either here or later when you ask me about my mentors, I really need to share that. Actually, Chris McCluskey, who owns the Professional Christian Coaching Institute, taught me that, or pointed that out to me in coach-like fashion when there was a little bit of misfit occasionally on our team together. So totally his wisdom with that.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay, our next one, and our fifth ability, is about confidence. And it's about the ability to defy self-doubt and still lead with confidence. What's your key for building your confidence and not getting stuck in the trap of the imposter syndrome? How have you avoided that,
Well, I don't know if I've avoided it, but I've tried. Well, I will say I have tried what a lot of people recommend, and that's, of course, this is a parody, but I'm good enough, I am enough, I can do this, all that. I have found that the longer I dig deep into my heart to find my adequacy, I have none. Wow. It's no wonder those voices ring in my head, but I do have a God who is adequate for all things. And so I stopped trying to convince myself that I'm adequate and I can fill the gap, when the truth that resonates with me is God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all wisdom in everything, you may have sufficiency for every good deed. He can fill all gaps. He's adequate. And so he's the only one I need. And that's what I try to lean into when I'm doing scary things that make me feel like, who am I to be doing this?
Wow. Tapping into the source, right?
Yes.
So, quick fire round then. So, what does the first 90 minutes of your day look like?
All right. I have a brand new puppy, a Labradoodle. So first part of the day has to start with taking the dog out, but that's okay. After that, I like to review my memory verses, review and go through my prayer cards. I have prayers on index cards that remind me of what, so I don't forget certain people or clients. I do my Bible reading, my morning meeting with God, and a little bit of writing. Yeah.
And are there any other key habits that have contributed towards your success over the years?
I think consistency, which is not natural to me. So just teaching myself to, how Brian Tracy says, start the day by eating. No, it's actually, he got it from Mark Twain. Eat the frog first.
Right.
Because if that's the worst thing you face all day, you've already gotten it over with. So in that morning 90 minutes or a little bit after, I force myself to do the things that I consider the most difficult for whatever reason. So that's done first. And that has actually been a huge game changer for me.
And then what's your biggest weakness as a leader?
Avoiding conflict. I do like everybody to like me. I much prefer to lead through encouragement, but nonetheless, as coaches, we are truth tellers. People pay us to tell them the truth. Not that we can't encourage them with it, but to always be honest. And so it's training me and teaching me, being a coach, how to, even in my personal relationships, not to avoid conflict and confrontation, but to somehow be an encouraging truth teller instead. Yeah.
And what's your biggest strength?
Relentless belief that God has got this.
Amen.
Because he does.
Amen. And who have been your top 3 most significant mentors in your journey up to now?
The first one would be my husband, Ron, who's an amazing man. Next would probably be Chris McCluskey. He is the co-host of Professional Christian Coaching Today with me, and he owns the school that I train at. He is the best coach, bar none, that I've ever heard.
Wow.
Just boom. If you need coaching, that's where you go. And then around business things, I'm in a mastermind group with Dan Miller, and I learned wisdom just drips from his lips every time he opens his mouth. It's such an honor to be sitting at the feet of these kinds of people.
Wow.
Yeah.
But let me dig a bit deeper into those three relationships and ask the question, what's the best single piece of advice you've gotten from each of those three people?
Well, my husband, this is going to sound funny because it's not really advice, but he looks at me all the time, no matter what I'm doing. He says, honey, I'm so proud of you.
Oh.
And when he says that, I see him imaging my Father in heaven.
Wow.
And I can feel my Heavenly Father's smile being reflected, the image bearer of my husband. And it has been the world's, I'm probably going to cry when I say that, the world's greatest gift to me. It's a treasure. Chris, I think I already told you one of his really helpful tips to me was that about team building, is we're trying to put together a dynamic team to really help the school get the word out about what we do. And then Dan Miller, he has this illustration. I don't know if you've seen him do it, and I don't know if I should even try to imitate it because I won't do it justice. But the bottom line in that is I can only serve from a full cup. So to run myself ragged and then serve from an empty cup, thinking somehow that's more holy and righteous, is actually a flawed philosophy and doesn't serve anyone well. I need to be engaging in my own spiritual development, professional development, personal development, be filled up, and then serve from that full cup. And then I have something, perhaps, Lord willing, worth giving to the world.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. I love that. Serving from a full cup. That's a word of wisdom for me right there. I want to just ask another quick question about leadership, because you've got an extensive background in ministry as well as a background in business. Having seen what you've seen, experienced what you've experienced, there's somebody listening right now and they're thinking, they know that God has called them into ministry and they've got a heart for business and entrepreneurship as well. And they're trying to navigate that journey as to, building a model or, developing a ministry model that is going to be effective and relevant, taking into consideration this entrepreneurial mindset and coaching practice and what have you. What advice would you give to them?
Well, okay, so I'm going to cheat, maybe double dip and get a couple things. One is that the world will tell you, charge what you're worth. And here's what I've got to say about that. That is impossible. It cannot be done. Each and every person listening to this podcast today is created in the image of God. They are irreplaceable, invaluable. No one in the universe can charge what they are worth. So let's just take that off the table once and for all. Now, what is God calling me to charge in light of who I serve, what's good for me and my family, and what's good for this person? Once I move my ego out of the way, and I think it's got to say something about my self-worth, the Lord tells us what is a fair and good and just and right price. And then we can quote it without flinching or without fear, whether it's primarily ministry or primarily business. Once God has told us what to charge and we're not all caught up in some weird self-esteem thing with it, we can build on it and feel confident in it.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. And if there's a book or a resource maybe that you'd recommend to a leader or entrepreneur listening right now, what would that be?
All right. So is it fair if I recommend one of my own?
Of course you can. Of course you can.
Only because I saw God do such amazing things. It's completely free. This past year, he's been working on my passion project with me, God, called the 31-Day Prayer Challenge. And it's just taking one point about your business each day. And it's a principle from Scripture. We know that God promises to bless us. And so principle, praying it over our business that day and then looking for God to work that day. doing that for 31 days. So I recently opened up a Facebook group and everybody shared just parts of their prayers every day for 31 days. We had almost 1,000 coaches in the Facebook group, people sharing the amazing things God did simply because we're intentional about praying about our business. We're not pretending there's this weird dichotomy between my spiritual life and my business life. They're all one and the same. All of life is spiritual, right? And so I'm super excited. So it comes with free downloadable prayer cards that people can download, print out, and do on their own. Or I plan to offer more Facebook kind of group-oriented challenges throughout the year this year. But I just say because the way God blessed that and the ability to be in community with other Christian coaches and entrepreneurs, it was one of the most precious experiences of my life to date. So it was really fun.
That is amazing. And, everybody listening probably heard that number 1,000 inside the coaching group. Guys, if you need some help with your marketing, you need some marketing strategies, you need to speak to Kim. If you're thinking about growing and scaling your business, your coaching practice, you need to get on the phone to Kim. She's got the tools. You heard that 1,000 coaches in her group there. Guys, you need to really go and do some Google searching. In fact, how do we find out more about you, Kim? Where do we go? Can you give us your social media handles, your website address, and what have you?
Absolutely. You can go to the website, which is kimaverycoaching.com. So kimaverycoaching.com. A couple times a year, I launch a group program called Marketing Momentum, full service, stem to stern, helps people really launch or grow their coaching practice. And of course, I do individual business coaching there as well. I'm on Facebook, as you know, under K Avery. There's 1 million Kim Averys in the world, it turns out. So facebook.com/K Avery or Kim Avery Coaching on Facebook is my business page. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn under Kim Avery as well.
Awesome. We're almost done here, Kim. But tell us, what are you fired up about right now? What are you really kind of on fire for?
Truly, I am fired up at what I see God doing through this tool of coaching. It is a tool and a discipline whose time has come. And I'm constantly in awe of just the ripple effects, just from one life to another life to another life, but also the global impact that coaching is having in the church and in the world. It just gives me goosebumps. So if you're not a coach and you're listening to the podcast, consider getting at least the tool of coaching in your business toolkit because it's powerful.
Brilliant. Hey, Kim, thank you so much for your time today, man. So much. I think you grounded us today, Kim. That's what you've done, really. You've really grounded us in a sense of, what is God saying to us? What is the heart and the mind of God concerning our lives and our businesses right now? What is it that we need to go back to God and have a conversation about and get focused on? You've helped us to understand, obviously, about the powerful tool that coaching is and how it can transform the way we lead as well, as a tool in our toolkit, how it can really impact the way we lead and how we can bridge that gap for those that maybe are in our churches and maybe disconnected or not seeming to be able to reach their purpose. And we're preaching sermons perhaps all day long and we're teaching all day long and they're nodding and they're saying, yes, I know, I get it. But we're not seeing their lives move forward. Coaching potentially is a key or a tool we can use to help them get unlocked, get some clarity, develop their skill set, get on the right track into the things of God. So, guys, if you're listening and you may be hearing about coaching for the first time, I don't know, maybe you've been doing some coaching, but you recognize from the conversation here that you need a coach yourself. Please go check out Kim Avery's materials, check out her website, get in touch, and be blessed. I know you'll be blessed. Kim, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Thank you again for joining us today on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast. I pray you've been inspired, you've been lifted, you've been encouraged to take your personal leadership to the next level. We really encourage you guys to just take action, make it happen, do something, start somewhere, go out and change the world in some way, big or small. Guys, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, please share with your friends, share with your loved ones, your colleagues, someone out there you think might benefit from hearing this great content. And if you want some more questions answering, you got a question, email me, Errol@errollawson.com, or if you want a free 30 to 45 minute coaching session with myself around the leadership challenge or issue you're working on in your business, your church, or in your organization, please feel free to email me right away or get you booked in. It's Errol@errollawson.com. Thank you again for listening. Go to our iTunes page, check it out, check out the previous episodes, give us a nice review, that would be awesome. Really appreciate if you could do that for us. We really appreciate you just for being here and listening. Thank you so much. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Rising Generation.